Are you a details person? Then you're in the right place. Today, we're talking about the C-type leaders on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. AJ, we are wrapping up the Deep on DiSC mini-series here on the podcast. And man, I'm really glad that we're doing this. I hope that folks will share these episodes with people on their team, with their board members and things like that. Use that simple assessment that we have embedded on the site so that you can send your board members there or your staff or whatever and figure out what are your types. If you want to know more like what your secondary type is, just Google for a more in-depth assessment than the one that we have on our website. But I'm really glad that we've done this, AJ, and today we're wrapping it up.
Yeah, it's been a great series, and I'm glad we have this reference material out there now for people to go back and listen to. It's actually been kind of fun for me as somebody who doesn't necessarily get into this area of study very much. It's been really helpful for me personally to be studying these things with you each week. And so, yeah, I encourage if you're like me and you're kind of like, whatever, personality stuff. I mean, maybe go back through and listen to these again and do a little Google search and just kind of think about this. It's made me think more about the people that are around me and members of our team, Scott. So, I guess for me personally, it's been a good series because I've gained some understanding and it's changed the way I think about some people. And so I guess it's a fun party game. You can go, I think I know what letter this guy is over here.
Yeah, it's a good point, AJ. I think that there are limitations to all of these kinds of tools. We talked about this in the first episode of this, that it's just a tool. It's not like it's not an authoritative thing on your life. And also people are nuanced and people are blends of things. Mm-hmm. So you can't think of it that way. However, as a tool for team formation, for balancing the team dynamics and for understanding one another, who we should delegate certain things to, who we should listen to more and rely on in different situations, it is valuable because we are all created differently a little bit from one another. And so having tools like this, I think, are really, really, really helpful. So I hope that it's been valuable to you, dear listener. And with that being said, maybe let's just hop into, let's orient again, AJ, for people who are listening, where the C-type is. So if you want to think sort of the task orientation to people orientation axis, and then we have our vertical axis of sort of an introversion to extroversion, which we talked about this last week. It's not so much, it's more like cautious and reserved when I'm saying introverted, and extroverted be more like outgoing and risk-taking and fast-paced. So, where the C is, which we're talking about today, this is a person who is task-oriented and more reserved, more introverted, less risk, more risk averse, less risk taking, that's more slow paced.
Yeah. This is the lower left quadrant.
Lower left quadrant. Yeah. So think accountant, engineer, think person who likes to work quietly in an office somewhere with a spreadsheet and a timeline and a task list. That's the C.
Yeah. Yep. In its more extreme form or dominant form. A lot of these other ones, Myers-Briggs and these others, I think, they maybe those, I'm not sure what the history is of all these and who came first or whatnot, but I think a lot of other personality tools and assessment tools probably were developed to give you more granular detail. Like, well, it doesn't, like, everybody's not that way or that way, so we're going to go even deeper. So great. Those are maybe, more granular tools, but I think, DiSC is great. It's simple, it's easy to understand, but it is still a spectrum on everybody. So, and maybe we'll toss in some of our own little personality quirks as we go to illustrate that. All right. the strengths, every week we've talked about strengths, challenges, and then a finally kind of key to success, kind of best case scenario or a great working environment for these types. So today, for the C type, the conscientious type leader, our strengths, the first one is that they're organized and they're really great at thinking through systems and developing pathways to accomplish goals. And so this is really good. And this, for me to say this about Scott, is an area that Scott actually shines in. So the piece of C that Scott is thinking through systems. I think,
and that's the one little piece that I have. Yeah. But I think when I take this, it's always my lowest scoring. But again, this speaks again to the nuance of people, right? Like,
yeah, right.
Even though you may not have much of this, you may have a piece of it. So,
yeah. This is a little piece of what I have as well, because Scott is more of an I. Scott has lots of ideas, and when Scott has an idea and he tells me about it, immediately I think through, okay, what are the questions about how do we get there? Here, because we would have to do this and this to be able to accomplish what you're talking about. So again, I'm like a less dominant DiSC, but my C comes out when an I presents me with a big idea. So right. That's kind of how these things begin to fit together.
Yeah. So a C is going to be someone who's going to be way more organized. Like they know everything in its place, and everything has. My wife is a C as well, and so like she likes to organize her clothes by color, and she gets real irritated when I'm hanging clothes up in the closet, and I'm like, I don't know, it kind of looked like it was in the right spectrum of the color coordination. And now I'll come home sometimes and open up my drawers and all the t-shirts are sorted by color. And I'm like, I will never keep this up. This is setting me up for failure, But really likes details, likes for things to be organized. And that is not me by nature. I just have a way of doing things, right? Like I know where things are and I have my own system. But it's not, no one would look at me and go, that's organized. But a C type leader is, AJ. Yeah. They like to have things in their place.
Yeah. So our second strength, which is really the asset that comes in the church in many ways, especially working with the Malphurs Group on like the strategic envisioning process, which in its final form, whenever we're talking about implementing, changes, positive changes in the church, it becomes project management. And the C-type leader is going to be your asset in implementing projects, developing timelines, managing resources. So project managers. And so this is a great person to have on what we refer to as a strategic leadership team for, developing a pathway forward for churches in beginning. So, visioning, not going to be their strength, but once we have an idea, once we have a plan, then they're going to be like, all right, let's lay this out and let's get people to work doing all the pieces that need to be done.
That's right. Give me the budget, give me the timeline, give me the spreadsheet, give me the critical path. Like they love a Gantt chart. They're going to be all over all that, and tend to be actually really good managers. So even though they struggle with interacting with people, by struggle, I don't mean like they're not capable of doing it. They just don't enjoy it. It's not life-giving to them. Those people interactions are draining for them. But the C-type leader is actually usually pretty good at saying, hey, you do this, you go get that done. Managing different people's schedules, kind of figuring out who could be, like if you were to work at Starbucks or something, you'd want to put a C-type leader in charge of putting together who's going to work what shift. Like they're going to be good at that. They're going to be able to see all those puzzle pieces and work it together. Likewise, in strategic envisioning, you put the C-type leader in charge of running an implementation team. They're probably going to be really good at that because they can say, here's the tasks that need to get done most urgently or are most important. And here's the best person equipped to get that thing done. So they're really good at that part of management. And honestly, we'll talk about this more later, probably, but we don't use these leaders much in the church, I don't think, or at least that's been my experience, certainly in declining churches. I don't know if we're just not platforming C-type leaders as much, or what the deal is, but those churches tend to struggle with following through, and you need these are your follow through people. Like, this is what they do. They live to follow through. And so if you're struggling as a church to follow through, these folks probably don't want to be the main leader. They would probably hate that. But to give them a voice and to give them a role where they can help drive things forward would be really good.
It made me kind of think of The Office. Michael Scott always trying to sideline Toby. Toby could foresee issues that were going to come up with Michael's ideas. Michael didn't want to hear it. Toby never really got the platform to.
Why are you the worst?
All right, our next one, our third strength for the C-type conscientious leader is that they play by the rules. They're okay following the rules that are outlined in whatever area that is. So now some personality types see that and they're like, that's a strength. To me, that's a challenge. But for the C-type leader, they're like, okay, I have the bounds that I need to work within, and that's okay. They're going to perform well within the boundaries that they've been given. And
in fact, if you give them boundaries and say these are the parameters, then not only do they like that, they tend to actually be able to be optimally effective. So if you give them a set of boundaries, then within that, they're going to be just really highly productive. When there aren't rules and there aren't boundaries and there aren't processes in place, they don't know what to do. Like, it's not that they're lazy or not self-motivated. It's just like, you've got to give me, it's like having a really powerful locomotive with no tracks to run on. It's like, doesn't matter how powerful that machine is. If there aren't tracks for it to run on, it's not going anywhere. And a C is like that. You have to give them rails to run on. And if you can give them that, it's off to the races. But without rails, without parameters, they're going to languish and be like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so they play by the rules. That's true, but they also thrive with parameters and rules and processes. So you'll get the most out of a C-type leader if you can give them those parameters.
That's cool. One of Scott's strengths is also illustrations and analogies. I appreciate that about you, Scott. I don't know what type that comes from, but
it's all the years of preaching. I gotta come up with an analogy.
All right, our challenges for the C-type leader. First of all, they struggle to see outside the box, which sort of we were just talking about with playing by the rules, having boundaries. So, for decision making and for systems development, struggling to see outside the box. They're just not your visionary people. And again, total spectrum on all of these areas. You might meet people that have these things, have these components within them. But your C-type people they want to be in the box. They're kind of like, let's work within the bounds that we have.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And they're not going to probably conceive of a new way of doing something. But going back to what I was just saying, like, they can conceive of taking something that does exist and making it way better. So if you have a C-type leader that you're working with or is on your team, maybe don't ask them to think of what's a new way we could do something. Maybe don't ask them to think that way. Instead, go, how could we take this thing that we're doing that we like, and how could it be way better? Because if you put that around it, then they'll go, well, I can think of 15 ways to improve this, to optimize this. So that is I guess a way to vision, AJ. But they're not going to come up with the new thing. That's just not how their brain works. And that's okay, because you need both. You need optimization and you need innovation. And so put them on the optimization task and they'll do really well at that.
So that's a good segue now into our second challenge, because there tend to be non-confrontational people. And so if they were asked to make something better, they may be less likely to speak of things that might, put anybody down or challenge them, or, say that, well, it could be better if this person wasn't here or was doing something different.
Yeah. They don't like conflict at all. And so they will be grumpy and bitter before they'll ever say out loud what it is that's bothering them. which is not good. So if you're a C-type leader, just know that it's not healthy to harbor all that resentment and to and let it out. As someone who's not a C-type leader, AJ, and you have some of that, and we've got other people around us who are more that. I want to hear it. Like, I want to hear the criticism, because I don't take it too personally. And even if I do, I'll get over it in 5 minutes. Like, I may blow up and get angry for 5 minutes, and then I'm fine. And then I'm over it and I'm ready to move on. But we need to hear, those of us who are not C-type leaders need to hear the pushback on why something is a bad idea, or why something is inefficient, why something isn't working. We want you to speak up. So do that. Speak up, say something. But C-type leaders, one of their challenges is they tend to see problems that they don't share, and they just keep them to themselves. Not good.
Yeah. So segueing once again now to our third challenge of the C-type leaders, that they might even be overly critical of other people's performance. And especially if they're starting to get out of bounds, which, is the security blanket for the C-type, to have those boundaries. So people pushing the bounds and, not performing up to their standards is something that, again, they probably won't verbalize that unless they maybe are comfortable in an environment where they're okay sharing what they feel, or have a relationship with somebody that they feel comfortable enough that they can share that. Otherwise, they might just be over there simmering, or really being overly critical of others.
Yeah, it's hard to explain this, I think, especially if this isn't you and you can't relate to this. But processes, it's not just like laws, AJ. Obviously, if someone's breaking a law, we should all feel outraged about that, no matter what type you are. But true C-type leaders, and again, AJ, like you said, everything's a spectrum, but someone who is a true C, they look at processes and recommendations and things like that almost through a moralistic lens. So when people aren't filing their reports in on time, when people aren't following the process that has been laid out, or when people aren't even taking recommendations as seriously. So C-type people probably got really irritated during COVID when some people were like, oh, this is only recommended. That probably bothered them, because they apply like almost a moralistic lens to that. Like, this is deeply wrong if you don't follow the process. And that can be, again, there's some value to that, I guess. So it's not pure anarchy in our society, I suppose. But that's not real life. There's a whole lot of gray. Not everything is black and white. There's a lot of gray in life. And even as believers, we all accept that there's a lot of gray things. We will use like nice language and call them secondary, non-salvation issues, right? There's a lot of things that are gray.
Non-essentials. Yeah.
Non-essentials. That's right. But a true C-type leader struggles with that. They want things to be black or white, and they're hard, not just on other people, they're hard on themselves. And so they if there's any like lack of integrity in themselves, that will bother them. And when they see that in other people, it's almost unforgivable. They're like, can't believe it that someone would be that disappointing. And so just watch that in yourself, that you, from a theological perspective, we're all sinful. So you can't look at someone and go, oh, how disappointing. We're all disappointing. That's the point. Like, that's why we need Jesus. Right? So try not to be so hard on yourself, for one, and on other people. Because I know this for a fact, because I have C's in my life. They're harder on themselves even than they are on other people. And you have to show yourself some grace. And you have to show it to others as well.
Yeah. That's really good. I especially like kind of bringing in the theological side of things. A lot of debate in the church. Maybe if of course, everybody listening or watching has probably had these things at one point, talking about an interpretation of scripture, or an idea that Jesus presents. And it might have been a C, or maybe you were the C, that your position on it was more definitive. It was more cut and dried for you. Whereas somebody else might be like, I don't know if that's really what that means, or, look at other examples and debating with you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. Because
The difference between it, so like I don't know, this is now we're kind of getting granular, I suppose, but a D will do this also. A D will be like, it's this way. But if you disagree with them, they're like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like that's
they're confident in their
C,
own decision. They don't care
that's
whether
right.
you come along or not. Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yeah.
I know I'm right, therefore I don't care.
Yeah.
Whereas a C is going to believe that they're correct and be offended that you don't agree with them, or don't see it the way that they do. And they'll think about it. They may even obsess about, depending on what the situation is and the relationship. Yeah. They may obsess about that and go, why is this person not seeing it this way?
Well, that's good. Scott, bring us home with some keys to success for the C types.
Here's the thing, to have success as a C-type leader, most people don't see the puzzle pieces the same way that you do. And your ability to manage people and processes and resources and timelines, it's essential. And it's an undeniable gift to the church. We really need C-type leaders moving things forward in the church. But don't forget that the pioneers and the entrepreneurial type people, especially like the D's and the I's on your team, they're not your enemy. They're your partners playing their role. Their role is to dream up new things and to push into new spaces. And so find ways to support one another so that the church can reach its God-given potential, both as it seeks to expand its borders and boundaries, reach new heights, new territories. That's what the D's and the I's do. But often those things fall short because they don't have you to follow through, to follow up, to take care of the details, and to make sure that the things that are dreams become reality. So you are needed. You are essential to the church. And I hope to see more of you on teams that we work with as we do strategic envisioning.
Yeah, that would be good. Well, because Scott and I both have a little bit of C in us every now and then, we've numbered all of our episodes of the podcast. And today was number 139. So if you go to malphursgroup.com/139, you can read today's show notes about the C-type conscientious leaders. And if you want to hear the other 3 episodes in this series, just back up 1 digit and you'll get each of those other 3 out there on the website as well. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back with something new next week.